Okay, thank you.
Welcome everyone to the EVCO monthly meeting for the month of June. And this week or this month, we're going to talk about a number of things. So first thing is EV Everywhere. So EV Everywhere is a pilot project that Hydro Ottawa is running to control charging. So we'll talk a bit about that. Most of you already heard about it, but we would like to get more people into the pilot. Then we'll talk about troubleshooting charging. So Mike is going to present that. And Mike is, this is one of the presentations that he did in our series of presentations for general audiences. Right now, it's specifically us. Then we'll have Karel, we see him on the screen there. He'll talk about his straw house, which is really, really interesting. Then we'll, like usual, do the news. And I put the past and future events at the end again so that close a bit better. Next slide, please. Down there. Okay, so EV Everywhere. So as many of you know, so Hydro Ottawa came to us a little while back to get some guinea pigs, I guess, to try out the software. And it's been a while they were in there, and they've been having issues. So, but what they want to do is they want to start moving ahead. So essentially, what this is the sales pitch from them, right? So. They're saying they'll continue to a more sustainable future by charging when there's cleaner energy, right? So most of us already know we should charge at night and as far at night as possible because that's when the grid is less busy and we have more clean energy, right? So this is not really for us. We are there to help them fix the software, make sure the software works for everybody. It's not about us, okay? So when you hopefully everybody that can will join the pilot program, and there's an incentive for you actually. We'll get some money back from Hydro Ottawa for it. So the idea is for us to make it work, exercise it, report bugs and all that. Okay, so we can make it better. So right now they only support Teslas. Okay, they're having a number of issues with other vendors. So I know that with Hyundai in particular, the issue is that Hyundai doesn't allow them to do a whole bunch of calls to their service. This is probably a cybersecurity thing, right? To prevent a denial of service attack or something of the sort. But anyways, it's an issue they have to work around, and they're trying to work around it, but they're not there yet. So anyways, I'll show some screens where it talks about the departure actually. So. Sorry? Okay. Good turn it off. So these are screens that show the app. Okay, so the first screen there, see you have it in, that's my Tesla Model Y 2021. By the way, they only support one Tesla. I've got two Teslas on the account, they only support one right now, okay? And so that's the older one that's there. And you see this is in the afternoon, so you can see here that it's not a good time to charge. It's around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, okay? So it's got a score telling you when you're looking in the app, giving you a sense of whether you should be charging at that time or not. If you look at, there's a power data button at the bottom there, here. And that brings up this screen here, which is very similar to the screen from GridWatch that we've seen before, okay? So I think they take the data from there. It's not quite exactly the same numbers, but it's close. One thing to note again, solar here looks like it's very small, okay? 1.2% looks very small, right? It only counts grid-attached solar. Okay, so if there's a large field of solar somewhere that's attached directly to the grid, it counts. If it's something that's behind the grid, like IKEA, for example, it's behind the meter. Okay, so if that wouldn't count, any rooftop solar you would have would not count. Okay, so just be aware of that. Just go down one. There's also, if you look at the next tab at the bottom, is much capacity. There's only this charge. You see charge here. That's what it looks like. So this is the car, the CPU, 64%. And you can see it here, it's also 64%. Sometimes it's a bit off because it doesn't refresh the data all the time, right? But it's pretty good. It's pretty good to figure out what it's like. Okay, so if you go down one more. So if you look at charging history, this gives you an idea of when you were charging up. I wanna talk to them about this because I don't understand why my car would have stopped charging for a little while. This is 110 minutes here. This should have brought me past midnight. And this is, so why did it stop for a while? I don't know. So I'm very curious because maybe the car is doing something it shouldn't. Or maybe they're not getting the right deal, right? So next, yeah. And, yeah, I forgot to, okay, so, sorry. So in the back here, on the right-hand side, you see the rewards part. So I got some rewards here. You store that's because when I did the app, they give me 10 points every time I go to the app. I should read a little after doing that. But anyways, but the other ones, the other points are for charging, charging at the right time and stuff like that, right? So, so you see that I've got 57,000 points. I'm not exactly sure how I got there. Not exactly sure what I could do with those points, but anyways, so what they're trying to do is they're trying to give you an incentive to do the right thing and give you some points which will translate to something eventually, but I'm not sure exactly what. So tomorrow, the ones who are in the pilot or who were, we were trying to get in the pilot because they had Ionic 5s and we couldn't get the Ionic 5 to work, you'll get an email tomorrow about that, okay? So also, we'll send an email to the general membership to see if there's other people who want to participate because we're trying to get as many people as possible. In Hydro Ottawa's territory, technically, it doesn't really matter whether you're in their territory or not. That being said, they link your Hydro Ottawa account with your account on here, okay? So that they can give you money back, right? So that's it for the for that part. I'm gonna go next. So return.
That's a good question.
Sure.
They're actually controlling the charging of the.
So they have the ability to control the charging of the car. Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So the idea is to, when there's a peak in demand, they'll cut off all the charging and then get you to charge later on, right? You could override it, absolutely. You could override it. If you absolutely need to, you could override it, right? So, so that's very interesting. Actually, I forgot to mention it. You could put a profile, a charging profile. The screen was there, but I forgot to talk about it. And you could have up to 5 different profiles that cover different times of day and all that. What I illustrated on the screen that I showed that I forgot to talk about is that I had it set for 6 o'clock in the morning on Mondays and on Thursdays, which is when I go play hockey. I leave at 6 in the morning. The rest of the week, I have it charging up to 7 in the morning, which is when the rates go up, right? When we get off the ultra low period, right? Okay, any other questions? No? That's a slide. There you go.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about troubleshooting common charging issues. I'm sure you guys will throw a bunch more charging issues that I didn't think of at me, but this is meant to be sort of a, if you just got your EV, because there's a lot of new EV owners out there now, and you rock up to a fast charger and it's not working, like, what do? Do you panic? Just call Mike. All the above. Don't call me. The friends that I've got to buy EVs, they call me the EV hotline, and they just like, they will literally call me day or night and be like, I'm stuck in Valley Field. How do I charge? I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Anyway, so sometimes when you're on a road trip, things don't go as planned, right? Stuff happens. That's kind of the fun of road trips. So you have like the wrong connectors. You have broken chargers, slow charging, busy charging, can't disconnect. Oh my God, charging etiquette is important. So remember that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we'll talk about connectors first. So there are a lot of people on the Ionic 5, for example, that's for my mind, that are like, can I use a Tesla charger? Short answer, no. Long answer, kind of, sort of, maybe. It depends on the charger, and it depends on the connector. So there are, well, you guys all know this, right? There's CCS, and then there's NACS, right? Those are the two. And with CCS, J1772, which is the slower charging. But there are adapters. Right now, there are adapters for CCS to Tesla or NACS. There will be adapters from Tesla to CCS in other way. And there are already chargers for the slower charging. There are already adapters for the slower charging stuff. We all know this. I don't have to go into huge detail. So just if you go on a road trip, throw your adapters in the trunk. And unless you don't have a front because you have a Volkswagen, then throw them in the trunk. Next slide, please. What do you do if the charger's broken? So this happens not as often as the media would have you believe. I've encountered it a few times, but it's not nearly every time. And
Sorry, I think what you mean there is if the charger doesn't work, it's not necessarily broken, but you think it is because it doesn't work, right?
sure, yes, semantic
Right.
please. Change that. Broken as far as you rock up to it and it doesn't work. Sometimes it's just a software issue, right? Sometimes you can just call the number and they'll reboot it and it'll work. Sometimes it's a physical damage thing. They might flag it like this, although this is super nice. Like they almost never do that. But it's just a good picture to highlight that it can be done. Automakers and charging providers, you can do this. Sometimes this is just your payment method doesn't work. That happened to me. I didn't realize our credit card was maxed out one time and it doesn't work. Hell. And then so I had to pay with debit. It was fine. Sometimes it's your car. You just have to unplug it and replug it. So, like sometimes it doesn't seat properly. That's more of a problem for CCS, not necessarily Linux. That's the connector. That's a common problem at IKEA. Sometimes you just need to try a different stall for whatever reason. That one stall is just being finicky, and it works for some cars, and it doesn't work for other cars, and nobody kind of knows why. It just sort of is what it is. Gremlins in the system. Hopefully, these kind of problems will be going away as charging providers get better equipment. But that was definitely a problem down in the market. There was a charger that worked on some cars, but not on GM vehicles for some reason. But definitely, if you are experiencing problems, call the number on the charger. There's always a number. We call them, and that way they A, can either fix it on the phone and reboot it, or B, at least know it's broken so they can send the man to come get it and fix it.
Not a person.
Or a person. Dude.
Or you dead.
Robot. Probably not a robot. But yeah, so that's what you do if it's broken. Next slide, please. What if your charging is slow, right? So it works, but you're not getting the speed that you expect or that you were told to expect. First of all, to do that, you have to know what the normal charge speeds for your car is. So if you're lucky and you have a Hyundai product or a Kia, then you have like fast speeds, right? So you should be getting decent speed. But if you have like a Chevy Bolt or a Leaf, then you might expect 100. You can rock up to 150 kilowatt and expect to get that, but you're not going to because your car can't do that. It's only 50, right? So you have to know what your car is capable of before you get all frustrated that your charging session is slow. But it could be that your charging session is slow because your car is capable, it's just not filling it down. But there's a lot of variables that affect charging speed, right? So it could be if it's too hot or too cold. Usually too cold is the most common ones. Like in the winter, you won't get the fastest speeds that you can get in the summer. If you own a Leaf, too hot is definitely a problem, where it'll throttle right down to basically nothing. And you have to park your car in the shade because they don't have thermal management like a civilized EV. So one of the ways to mitigate the cold problem, at least, where the battery's too cold to charge quickly, is to precondition the battery. So the Chicago incidents last winter was mostly because a lot of Tesla owners who didn't know how to work their cars were rocking up to a fast charger at -30, and they didn't do any preconditioning, they didn't do anything, and so their battery was an ice block, and it's like they're getting very slow charging, it's taking forever. The way to fix that is to turn on preconditioning. The way you do that in a lot of cars is you set that charger as the destination. And then the car will be like, okay, I'm going to start warming up the battery pack, and you should see a little thing on the dash. Some cars are cool and have a button. You just push the button in the precondition. There are ways to activate it. So learn that. It'll be in your owner's manual. Read the manual. The preconditioning will help mitigate the speed issue in the winter. Pull down the shade. And also your state of charge will impact your charge speed. So if you're already at a high state of charge, like over 50%, then you're not likely to get fast charging speeds, right? Like most cars start ramping down around 50%. Certainly if you're at 80%, you're going to get very slow after that, right? That's why we recommend that people charge at 80, get fast charging because it's not time efficient. So your state of charge will actually impact the speed that you're getting. So all of these factors, keep them in mind next time you roll up to a charger. Or the charger could just be broken, right? And it could just be crippled but not offline, right? So they could just derate it. So if that's the case, and they're pretty sure that like my battery pack's warm, it's not too hot, I have a car that can do it, and I'm only drawing like 20 kilowatts, maybe go to the stall next over and see if that one's a little faster because it could just be derated. All right, next slide. All right, what do you do if your charger's busy? Well, the short answer is just wait. But honestly, it's not as big a problem as people in the media like you believe. I don't think I've had to wait for a charger exactly once. I think so far in the 2 years I've had my Ioniq. I didn't road trip my Leaf because I couldn't go past the green belt, but my new car came, and so I've only had to wait for a charger once, and even then it was like 5 minutes, so it wasn't a big deal. But you can check the status of a charger station before you arrive, and usually there are other charging stations nearby, right? So if you check it on the road, you get your partner to check it, or you check it on the nav. Some cars have it in the nav where you like put the charger in the nav, and then it'll tell you how many stalls are available. Take a peek, look at it on FlexCharge, see if there's a lot of traffic. Look at it on the app for that charger, see if there's a lot of people using it. And if it's super busy, then maybe think of an alternate that might be less busy. If you don't want to wait. Most locations have multiple dispensers, which means that usually somebody will be leaving quickly. So your best bet is to talk to the other humans at the charger and see who's in line and who's about done and figure it out. Be polite, be civil. We're all adults. Children are not allowed to drive cars. So I know for a fact every EV driver is an adult. So figure it out like grown-ups. And be patient. That's just all there is to it. It's not rocket surgery. Next slide, please. What if you can't disconnect from the car? So this is a super rare thing, but it does happen on occasion where the charger will not disconnect from the vehicle. Basically, every EV will have an emergency charger release somewhere in the vehicle. It'll be in your manual. This picture on the left is a picture of where it is on my car, the Ioniq, that's in the manual. The little hatch next to the charging port on the inside of the trunk. You just open it up, pull the cord, and it'll release the charger. Definitely don't do this while the charger's active. So the first thing you do is make sure your charging session is stopped, because the car won't let you unplug if it's actively charging your car, right? That's not a thing. So first, make sure that the charging has stopped. Usually the charger will get quiet and it'll look, the screen will say ready to disconnect. There will be a sign that the charging is done. Unlock your car, because some cars will lock it on if the car is locked. So if you unlock the car, it should release it. And then if none of those things work and you've sort of tried everything and you're like, it's definitely not charging, the car is definitely unlocked, locked and unlocked it again, come out. Then it might be time to pull emergency release, but it probably will never get to that. Just so you know it's there, it is there as like an emergency report as a backup. Next. All right, and then the last thing is charging etiquette. Talk about this a little bit about being adults. Only charge to 80% if possible. Now, sometimes you will need to charge for 100% at a fast charger just because you're going that, you need the legs, right? You're in the middle of the boonies and you just got to get to the next one. Totally fine. You're completely allowed to do that. But if you're doing that, right, I would recommend staying around the car just to let the next guy who comes in know that, okay, yeah, no, I really need it because I'm going to Timmins, right? Because most people will assume that if you're at 80% and you're still charging, then you're kind of a douchebag. And so they'll want you to sort of explain yourself, right? Because the etiquette is to charge to 80 and then move on. And the reason for this is because it's the faster to charge from 10 to 80 than it is to go from 80 to 100. That extra 20% is going to cost you the same amount of time, a lot more money, and you're just wasting time, right? You should leave at 80%, go to the next charger, and keep doing it like that. Go 80%, next charger, 3 hours away, and continue, right? Rather than wasting time for that extra 20%. But sometimes there are situations where you need that 20%. That's fine. So just hang around to like talk to people about that. If you're done charging, move your car out of the charging spot, right? It's not like a gas station where you fill up your car and then you wander inside the convenience store and like take up a spot, right? Nobody gets mad at you for that because everyone does that with a gas car. But with an EV charger, it's not the same, right? When you're done charging, move your car so somebody else can use it. Because they don't want to wait for you to come back to your car after your car's been sitting there for 10 minutes already done. That's not nice. only use the EV charging spots if you're actually going to charge, right? So there's 2 EV charging spots here tonight, and you'll notice that only one of them is being used because only one person needs to charge. None of the other EVs in the parking lot are parked in those spots because they don't need to charge, right? So only use them. It's not a EV parking spot, it's a charging spot. Don't unplug other people's EVs. A lot of EVs will have a lock, so you can't do that. But even if they're done charging and they're being a jerk and they're sitting at the charger and they're full and they're done, don't unplug them. That's a dick move. And they'll get mad at you. And if you break something on their car, then you're liable for that. So don't do it. But also don't be the guy who needs people to push. Return the charging connector to its proper place. I don't want to be your dad, but put your stuff away when you're done with it. Okay, this is like we learned this as children. And if you don't put it away where it belongs, then what's going to happen is a snowplow is going to come, or a garbage truck, or another vehicle, and it's going to rip it off the thing because it'll snag on a part of the truck. And then it'll be damaged, and then nobody can play with it, right? So put the thing away, put the toys away. It's nice. We're Canadians. It's light. It's not hard. It goes in a holster. They have a place for it right there. You just clip it in. Try and use a charger that matches the charging speed of your vehicle. I know this is hard, but this goes back to the first thing we learned, right? Where you have to know how fast your car can charge. And some chargers all come in different flavors, just like gas pumps come in different flavors. If your car is a slow charging car, if it's a Bolt or a Leaf or even a Kona, right? Don't park in the 350 kilowatt charging stall because that one you can't take advantage of that. You're going to be there forever. Go to the 150 or even the 50 if there's one of it, right? The 350 charger or even the 150 charger are for cars that can actually take advantage of that. So you're just inconveniencing everyone and it just causes delays in the system, right? So try and match the charger to your car. Now, obviously, sometimes you're just it'll be the only one available and you got to do it. Fair enough. But like, try and keep that in mind when you're charging try and match the charger to your car because then everyone's happy. Because you're not going to charge any faster just by going to a faster charger. Your car is the limiting factor. And then, report problems to the charger companies. So if they can't fix things they don't know about, right? And the more you complain, the more likely they are to fix it. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? They're a bureaucracy in a company just like everything else. So, yeah, I think that's it for me. Other questions? I think the next question.
Is it? I don't think so. No.
No. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? Anybody online? Did I miss anything?
Oh, there's a hand up, Terry.
Cool, Terry.
Yeah, you had some connectors there that were blue, and I was wondering why you didn't mention it at the first page where you showed connectors.
I can't hear. So say that again, Terry.
Yeah, you had some connectors that were diagram in your images that were blue, which is a Chatamo, and you didn't mention that at the very beginning. And there are used cars still out there that are using.
Yeah, that's true, Terry. I did not mention Chatamo. And like, not to make fun of it or anything, but Chatamo it's a dying standard. The only car that can take advantage of Chatamo is the Leaf. And the first gen Souls, and a lot of those don't have the range to really go anywhere now, especially the older ones.
But it's still a valid standard, and I agree that it's going out. It exists. It's everywhere. I have it. Second generation Soul, and they only got rid of it about 2 years ago, I think. So it's good to just put it in there and not say much other than that's a standard that's not going to be as common and new.
Yeah,
installs.
I mean, it's a deprecated standard that nobody's making cars with anymore, and the charging companies aren't deploying anymore.
Yeah, like people might see battery position.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. Okay, good point. Yep. I'll mention Chattanooga.
So there was a comment by Mark, if possible, leave a note on the PlugShare app to report that the charger works.
Yeah.
If possible, report on the speed of charge.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So you could check in PlugShare. And report
well.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I don't think we see the same to find the chargers and to.
I wish. A lot of people use PlugShare, so your best bet would be PlugShare. That's sort of the facto monopoly. Another company is charged up, they're trying to break in, but they're basically duplicating plug share stuff. Although I like supporting them because they're Canadian, but other than that, there's like plug share is wherever it is. So it's sort of like if you're making a Facebook competitor, like,
So that's to find the location.
yeah.
Paying for the service is a different.
Paying for the service, they'll need a credit card on some of them, or an app for some of them, it depends.
So you don't report broken on share, you have to go to the company.
So if you report on Plugshare, you're telling the community that it's broken, which is great. You do that, but you should also inform the company, which is usually the phone number on the charger itself. But yeah, I mean, I would report it in both places just so that everyone who drives an EV knows. Like during the derecho, right, a couple of years ago, there was a huge blackout in Ottawa, as most of you know. And Plugshare was super useful because people were reporting the chargers that had power. Right, so we knew that the charger down the road from us had power, which meant I didn't have to worry about charging it because I could just go there and refill and use my car to charge, like to run my fridges and stuff, right? So in events like that, it's also useful. So it's not just to report broken things, but it's also like in a disaster. It's like, hey, this one's working, guys, come here, right?
And PlugShare has a rating for the plugs, for the locations also. That's helpful if you're planning a trip. You'll have an idea whether you can count a location or not.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, and just filter out. What's that company that Ontario? The one was a scam.
Oh.
Well, no. It's like that small one that had like Scotiabank's had them.
What were they called again? I can't remember.
Yeah, I tried to use those, I can turn it close to the case.
Yeah, they're yeah. Filter that one out. We'll come up. With it.
Okay, that's it? Okay, great. So, we are planning an event, and you'll see about that a bit later, in Morton. We're going to do a presentation there, and it's Karel. And Karel, please correct my pronunciation if it's incorrect. But so Karel sent me links to pictures of his the building of his house, and also the setting up of his microfit implementation, which happened a little while back, but I thought it was really interesting. And I thought the audience here would be interested in hearing about how that went, because it's all about saving energy and all that, right? So, Karel?
Yeah, it's actually Carl, just pretend it's CRL, so no big deal. Okay, do I have control or I just have to say next slide?
Hold on a second here. There we go.
Okay. All right. Just the bottom line is, assuming everybody can hear me, scream if you can't. Why did I bother with Strawbale? Strawbale is essentially a waste material, and you can source it locally, so that's good for the environment. The mud for my wall was out of my backyard, so again, that's locally. When you build a Strawbale house, you create an efficient home with R40 walls. The net cost to build my straw house was about the same as my friend who did a stick frame house at the same time. The actual walls end up having a 3-hour fire rating compared to a stick frame, which is 20 minutes. The walls using the mud is actually a living, breathing wall that, even though my mud's my vapor barrier, it still allows some movement of air. If you're using earthen as I did, it's really easy to work with rather than working with concrete. It's just actually fun to get your hands dirty in mud and whack mud onto a wall. You can get creative with Strawbale. You're not stuck to the standard straight walls and whatever. Unfortunately, I should say unfortunately, when I did it, the problem with curved walls is the rest of the world still uses square things like beds and whatnot are square. So I tended to build it square because I know I had to fill inside, but you don't have that limit that you would. The other thing with the Strawbale house, you end up with a 10 times stronger vertically, 4 times stronger laterally wall than in a stick frame house. So net is an absolute fantastic building. Next slide. All right, this is my favorite picture. It's just the final product of my house, and we'll see this again. But it's a Strawbale house without the mud on it, so it's actually and what I think is it's very picturesque, and it explains what the house is. Next slide. All right. The start of the house, simple excavation. It is a slab on grade, which means there's no basement. And you'll see later on my presentation, particularly when we get into the solar, why I never built a basement. I'm very low, relatively wet, low water table. So it would be a reverse swimming pool. So just scrape the dirt off, put some gravel on, and then put up some forming boards for the concrete. And that's the base of your house. There is styrofoam out 4 feet from the edge of those forms for insulation to prevent frost from heaving underneath. Next. Okay, and further into the form, within the form, all the plumbing and everything goes into the gravel. So everything has to be pre-done for this slab on grade. And on the second one, you can see all the metal, and you can start seeing the PEX for the in-floor heating. And underneath the slab, there is styrofoam as well as a bubble wrap to help reflect the heat back into the actual slab. Next. Okay, that's the progression of the Strawbale. That's all the everything in ready for pouring of the concrete. Next slide. And concrete pour, it was on-site mix because we're a little farther away from the major center. So any concrete truck coming the distance, it would be relatively short time. So it was an on-site mix with a pumper that poured all the concrete into it. That was just an early start to get good concrete done. Next slide. And that's the slab done, all wet, ready, raring to go. You can also see, if you see quickly there, you see all the plumbing, all the PEX sticking up, everything is ready. So the plumber and the folks that did everything for the heating, they had to get it right. They only had one opportunity to do it right. So, and it turned out they did an excellent job, including things like drains and whatnot, all had to be located so that the building was functional. Next. All right, this particular form of Strawbale, it was called post and beam. And in post and beam, you basically put as little wood as possible to support your roof, put the roof on, and then you infill with straw. The primary reason for doing it that way is because you've got a person out there called Murphy. Murphy's law says if you put one bale down, it will rain for 8 weeks straight and things will get wet. People that have tried doing what is a load bearing, which is basically you build all your walls and then put the roof on after the mud, everything is done. They found that protecting your walls through inclement weather was extremely difficult. It wasn't worth the time and effort. You'll notice in this one that there is a fair amount of vertical wood. Most of the vertical wood is actually floor to ceiling bucks with a little bit of extra, but there's almost no lateral support whatsoever in there because it's the mud straw that will become my lateral support later on. Next.
So I see there's no thermal breaks there, right? In the wall, in the wood?
Yes, there is. There's a thermal break. You'll see later on when you see there's two things that are thermal break. Not in this slide, but later on, you'll see that the actual forms, there is actually styrofoam between the form and the concrete. So that's a thermal break. And then on the top of the concrete, there is 2x4s that go across, and we put Roxel in between the 2x4s so that below the actual straw bale, there is insulation between the bale and the actual concrete. So in this particular design, and it is a relatively unique design for Strawbale, the thermal breaks were taken care of. I actually had a great deal of flack from my Strawbale folks and counterparts for this design. This was actually designed by my father-in-law, and there is concrete, or there is a 2x4 at the edge of those the forms, so that in theory, the outer wall actually sits on a little bit overhang outside of the concrete, and they were concerned about the ability of the wall to actually support properly. 10 years later, or 14 years later, it hasn't been a problem. We have had no issues whatsoever. So yes, we dealt with thermal break. That is one of the reasons I didn't like the actual load bearing, because to do load bearing, you actually have to use steel or wire cinched down the roof. So you would have actually thermal wire running from the base up to where the top of the bales are in order to hold it in place, and you had thermal brakes. So this particular design is extremely well designed with thermal brakes. Okay. This particular side just shows the trusses. They're all standard trusses, again, done locally, whacked up. The people that actually did my framing and the trusses and whatever, they happen to be chainsaw framers from Quebec who did the framing, the roof, including the sheeting and the metal roofing on the top within 2 weeks, driving down every day from Quebec. Absolutely did a phenomenal job. Hydro is buried because we didn't want any intrusions and any poles kicking around. So that's a simple process. Next. All right, this shows the roof sheeting going on. The particular roofing that I purchased, it is a steel roof, but it's sheets about 30 inches side with 30 inches in size with stone coating. It's a Decra, and it's designed to go on sheeting. It is rated for water, and it's a 50-year warranty on that sheeting. You'll see that later on. You can't tell that it's a steel roof, but later on you'll see it. But it's impossible to tell. I can make good money every time somebody comes by and sees my roof. But that's it already and raring to go. And the next step is the bales. Next. And that's just another picture of it. And that is the, oops, back one. Go back one if you can. Okay, that is with the steel roof on it, on the sheeting. So the house is ready and raring to go. Full sheeting, and away we go. Next. Okay, ceremonial first bale. And this is where, if you're looking carefully, if you look at the behind the feet or beside the knee, where the person is kneeling beside the bale, you can see some Roxol there. So she's kneeling on a 2x4, and in between is Roxol, and that insulates the actual bale from anything to do with concrete. Plus, there's a vapor barrier underneath it to prevent any moisture from coming up. And that is essentially how you put your bales in. And the other detail you can see here, the wire is run down the side of the wood, but eventually it gets laid right on top of the bales, in between the bales. Next. All right, this shows the infill going on. This is the south of the building. You can see the huge windows, and this is where you see the floor to ceiling bucks. All the bales are put in, and see a little better later on. It's Lego style, alternate so that the gaps don't go straight vertically, and it's just put in place. Next. Okay, in order to get the bales in there, basically they're put in flat, not vertically, so that the ends of the bales can be cut. And we did this in this case with a chainsaw. You actually notched out the bales to fit around the vertical posts, so they fit around there. The actual R value, whether you do it vertically or horizontally with the bale, is about the same, but the ability to cut out the bale and wrap around the wood made life a lot easier. Again, you can still see here there is no lateral support in this at all. You can start seeing as well when you look at the roof some of the pattern for that steel roof. Next. This shows the wiring. Unfortunately, it's not a real clear shot, but if you look in the middle there's actually an electric outlet. The electric outlet has got a vertical board on it that's stuffed into the bale, and it's actually screwed onto this vertical board. Eventually that electrical outlet will be mudded in place, and it won't go anywhere forever. and all the electric wiring just gets laid in between the bales. There's no issue. You don't have to protect against nails or any other problems. It just gets dumped in there. Same with plumbing. When you need to run plumbing through it, you take a chainsaw, you cut out the notch, and away you go. The bales just get wrapped around it. Next. Straw bale at times is a pain in the butt. In order to accommodate my in and out for my HRVs, lots of bales getting stuffed, cut, and moved around. Really tricky for some things. But you can also see here part of the detail. There is at the top, that is below the roof line. Eventually that'll be covered with plaster to that, but you'll see that the actual bales will go up right to a board, and it's sealed off in the board. It's nice and tight in that space. Next. A little more of a close-up on how it fits into the structure. This one you can actually see the Lego alternate move over a notch like you would in Lego. The one thing when you're building straw bales themselves don't burn very easily, but during construction, all that loose straw is absolute huge fire hazard. You have to be very careful about cleaning up at the end of the night, because that is a huge hazard. And you'll see on the left-hand side that every time we're done, we put tarps over it to prevent the bales from getting wet. Once you've finished plastering, the bales will stay dry, but it's that period until you get all that plastering done that the bales are susceptible to any rotten weather. And my friend Murphy was around in spades here. Next. All right, this is the house with the windows in. You can see the light dark area. That's the windows. The white are the openable windows. Those windows are triple glazed with a film to allow the sun in and prevent the radiated light from coming out. So it's all triple glazed. And I mentioned earlier that my framers were chainsaw framers. Every window, every door went in without a hassle. So you can make comments you want about chainsaw framers. These guys did an absolute phenomenal job, and everything went in perfectly, no problem at all. Next. All right, again, we saw this picture earlier, but now you can see the progress of how it got together. And that is, again, I love this picture because it demonstrates what my house is. Next. All right, on the inside, that's the HRV you're talking about. I didn't really want an HRV, but code said I had one, so I had to fit one in. This demonstrates a couple things. Where the straw bale is on the wall, that's an exterior wall. Where you see the Roxol in between the studs is actually just sound insulation between, in this case, it was a bedroom and the utility room, and that's what we did, just to make sure that anything in the utility room didn't cause hassles. The HRV, you'll see to the right, it got drywalled in, and that's how the drywall fits in. Drywall meets up to the straw bale, but you do not put drywall over the straw bale. Next. Some of the details in straw bale. This one's got a lot of little details. When you're putting straw bale together, either side of the bales get covered in this wire mesh. So not wire, sorry, it's a plastic mesh. It's called text. And it gets covered, and we actually stitch it inside and out with a long needle so that it is formed. We actually do this primarily to make a nice solid wall and a straight wall. We spend a lot of time and effort just fussing with the wall. You'll see the vertical brown area is actually burlap over top of the wood, because wood itself does not adhere nicely to the mud. And then way at the bottom, the edge of the house has actually an aluminum edge there, drip edge, that will allow water to go away. In order for mud to actually attach to that, they put gutter guard, we stapled that in at the bottom so that the mud stuck and it wouldn't fall off later on. The other thing that this shows is in order to put fixtures in like faucets, you have to fix them very solidly. The other thing is it's so deep you can't do the regular frost-free faucets, but we put extra wood in, fixed it in, it is solid in there. And anywhere you're doing any work and as you're putting this mesh on, and if there's holes, you actually put cob underneath to make it solid so that you have a full solid wall before you do your final mud coats. Something a lot of people who do bale, they get hurried and they just stuff the bales in and then they try to mud it or concrete it. And it's the devil that you don't know. The more you work at it, the better it is. Next.
So I think this answers one of the questions there about how do you hang a TV and all that. This is for a Murphy bed, right? That plank on the wall?
That's correct. The reality is people have done testing. They actually tested with fish tanks, put rocks in fish tanks and put pegs through the walls. It's very solid in reality, but because I'm going to be putting a Murphy bed here, I knew I was going to put a Murphy bed in. I did some pre-work. On the left, you can see the little board, with the slats in between on the floor. We actually put that into the wall, mudded it in place. And then if you look carefully, you can see all that mesh went over top of it. So this became an absolute solid. It is never going anywhere, anytime. But just, it was like a guarantee. We probably could have got out of the way, but for the amount of effort this took to prepare, this prevented any problems, and the Murphy bed has not gone anywhere ever since I've had it in. Next. All right, first thing you do once you've got your walls, you spend an enormous amount of time preparing your walls, is you put a slurry of mud on it. So basically you take the mud, and again, I mentioned earlier, but the mud came out of my backyard. You take the mud and you spray a thin slip all over it, and that helps the mud bond to the actual straw. The straw, because it's a flat, the actual fingers of the ends of the straw stick out. So you want the ends of those straw to stick into the mud and be really solid and hold things tight. So they got a pump and they sprayed it. The bad news about spraying it, the pump wasn't very good at getting lumps out there. So in order to prevent lumps, we had to take every bit of mud that we sprayed on the wall and push it by hand through a mosquito screen. So here's us doing our excessive mud, and you can tell that at the time the weather was not what I call pleasant. So, but we got the mud done and we sprayed the entire house all the way around, inside and outside, with a slurry. Next. Inside, this is the kitchen. Again, it's sprayed with mud. Mud's going to go in between. Our kitchen cabinet people refused to put it on the mud. We could have, but they refused. They demanded to have 2x4s to screw the cabinets on. So we accommodated and filled in between so these 2x4s are on top of the bales, and we mudded in between as well, just to accommodate them. Next. All right. The first coat of mud after the slip it's mud, straw, and sand, a mixture, and it's something that we pre-tested to see what was the correct mix. It's done by hand. It's pick up a slab of mud and whack it on the wall. This is the part I really liked. And you can see that little pile in the middle there. That's just a pile of mud that was been pre-mixed. The bonus of doing it with mud is this mud didn't dry chemically. You could go for lunch and a break and just cover the mud, and it was still usable after. In fact, even the stuff that you spilled below was able to be reused by just putting a little bit of moisture in it. And you will notice that in this work, oh, go back one here, just back a little bit. On top of the roof, just back to it. You'll see our tarps on the roof. We put those tarps down every night. That is why I wanted a roof up there before I did all the mudding, because I knew I was going to have to protect the walls from any inclement weather whatsoever until we were done. Next. All right, interior details, lots of very fine work. It's kind of hard to see what she's doing, but above the window, there's actually a smooth curve. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see it's a nice rounded curve from the window right up to the roof. Very tricky detail to do. Absolutely looks gorgeous. Its final product is incredible. It's just during the work and time and effort, it was a very difficult thing to do. And you'll always notice on the picture to the right, that wall looks very crude and rough. But in order, once you've done the mudding, you make sure there's a mechanical like scratches on it in order to be able to put the next layer on. Next. This is really quick, so I'll have to try to keep going. Okay. All right. And as I told you, Mother Nature wasn't very kind to us. We started our build in July. This is starting to get later in the year. We had snow, and unfortunately, mud is natural drying. And when it's freezing and when it's wet like this, it was a real devil to get things to dry. We accomplished it, but it was a real devil to get things dry. Next. All right, this is the plaster. It's drying. This is a one coat, and you can see the natural drying on this one. It just takes time. It takes time, and you prayed for sun and whatever, but you don't want too much sun because it dries too quickly. Next. Right, other things that we did just for a little bit of fun. Our front entry, we created an arch. In order to create an arch, we used some plywood, and we actually put cob into the corner. Cob is just straw and mud, or straw mud, mostly mud and a little bit of straw stuffed in the corner. Try to create a nice little arch just for decoration. And you'll see the dimples on the picture on the right. Again, those are mechanical little holes just so that when we put the next layer on, that there was some mechanical form for adhering as well as the chemical mud to mud. Next. And interior work is painful, lots of it. This is another example of, you can see the scratching on the to the right hand side. It was done by lights on the inside because these are all battery operated lights. The other thing you can see on the picture to the right hand side, you'll see some very fine lines on the mud. That was actually plants growing from the mud. This is natural mud, so things grew. It scared the hell out of us because we thought we had mold because it was so cold, but it wasn't mold, thank God. It was just a few roots coming up. It didn't hurt anything, but it was there. Next. Right, and that is that front entry showing you that we created a nice rounded look. You can see the difference in mud, and there's still some scratching. The outside was never finished that fall because we ran out of time. Go next. We need time. And this is again showing the drying of the mud. This is the natural color of that mud. There was no paint or anything added. That was the bonus that we had. And you can see the difference between that vertical line that's dry, that's over top of the beams. So that was a lot thinner than the other areas. And our walls are absolutely straight. So some areas had to be filled a little more than others. Next. All right, the house is sealed inside and out. Just note that the first coat for our mud was straw, sand, and the mud from my backyard. The next coat, the final coat, the finished coat, was straw, cattail fluff, and that sand on the mixture. So it was rather cool to be able to run around to the neighborhoods and steal their cattails and pour the cattail fluff into the mud so that we got a nice finish. Next.
So that's not mold on the wall, right? It's overspray?
That is overspray, yes. So the first thought we had with our floor was going to be stained floor with varathane on top of it. And when he did the staining, that was an overspray from the staining. But the bad news is the concrete still had a lot of moisture in it, and you can see from the picture on the left of the picture on the right there was still moisture in the concrete, and it caused that varathane to get cloudy. Next. Unfortunately, and the picture on the left shows where we put some some wood on the floor, and you could see where the wood was, and it was getting cloudy. So we had to mechanically remove every last bit of varathane off the floor, and then we refinished it with just it was sanded to 800 grit, which is about the grit of wax paper, and then it got restained, and then nothing got put on it next. I should say nothing. It actually had a densifier. All right, when we're doing the interior, we use a slightly different sand than we did outside for looks. And in order, because this is mud and you don't get it out of your local home hardware, we had to do test patches to see which mixture of mud, cattail fluff, and this new sand worked best. So this just shows you the time and effort it would take to get it done and get it right. In our case of our house, we got it absolutely right. It's an incredible house. I'm very proud of it. It's absolutely a stunning house when you actually go see it. Next. Of course, we had to get the soffit and fascia on. That's late in the year. It's getting cold, but we still got that done. Next. And into the interior, the kitchen, all the kitchens were done with straw board. So this is not particle board in the normal sense. It was actually a board made with straw. The counter eventually became paper stone, which was a paper product, which was used for fish plants, really hard, really good. And then the eventual backsplashes were recycled glass. When we did that restaining of the floor, you'll see the brown edging. Because we didn't have time to actually take a small sander to the edge, we decided to just paint the edge that could have been cloudy, and every edge got painted with a nice dark brown. Actually turned out to a nice effect. And the dark color is actually the floor restained and only sanded with a densifier on it. That all it did was made it not absorbent water. Quick one here. If it froze, this is what happened to that front entrance. It got cold before we were ready. It wasn't dry. It actually peeled because of the freezing. The good thing is you scrape it, get it wet, scrape it, and put more mud on, and you would never know because the sorcerer of mud. The other thing is when we're done, we actually put a primer on to harden it, and a rain cell, which is the same as or similar to Thompson water seal. It's a clear coat that absorbs and it causes things to bead. Next. How am I doing for time there, Raymond? This is us putting on the
Yeah, you're pretty close to the end, I think, right?
Okay, close to the end for Strawbale, and I can skip the solar thing. Yeah. Okay, this is us putting on the rain cell. It's just a roller. It's like Thompson water seal. You just roll it all, and it will cause the beading of the water so that your mud doesn't get soft. Mud by itself is very hard until it gets wet. So as long as it stays soft, it was no problem at all. And like I say, it's lasted for years with minimal damage. Next. And that's the finished product of the front. The orange wood around the outside, just an accent piece. You can see that on the driveway, the house was raised a little bit, so there was a small plinth around the outside, just raised a little bit to keep it out of the moisture and wetness. But that is the final product with soft and everything, front door and entrance. Next. Okay, and this is the again finished product, natural color, very straight, smooth walls, absolutely wonderful product. We're very proud of it. Notice where the shadow is at this point in time. Go next. And again, that's the same picture of the house a year later with it all ready and ready to go. Next. Okay, this picture is just the other day, in the heat of the summer, you'll notice if you look at the bottom where the black boards are at the bottom, just out from that, the shadow of the sun in the middle of the day is just outside of the windows. So the overhang that this house has was designed perfectly in the middle of summer. I have no sun that comes into the windows. I don't have to worry about it overheating in the summer. It does both winter and summer. In the winter, the sun can go halfway down the building and life is good. In the summer, I don't have to worry about it. And just as an aside, you can see to the left, I've got my solar hot water here that was added to the system later on. Next. And that's the product a couple of years later, including Starlink. And away we go. Next. I think that's it.
Actually, if you want to go fast through the solar, that would mind.
Okay, quick ones. Yeah, around the corner from the house, the solar system, 50 panels. Next. Put out in the field. Next. And of course, the trench from the house, it's 300 feet away from the house around the corner and behind the hill. There's the trench with the conduit. And you notice all the water that's there and why I didn't build a basement. Next. There's a big hole full of water. Again, why we didn't build a basement in our house. It was enough water that it actually collapsed. They had to redig the hole. Next. Okay, and then to compensate for that, they actually put geotextile and extra gravel in the bottom of the hole to hold up the frame. Next. Large frame to hold up the form. Next. Tons of concrete to hold the big monster up. Next. And it's, again, you look at the left, you can see the water around the edge. We were constantly pumping just to get this done. And that's the type of land that I live on here, but it's nice, but you don't go down. Next. And that's the largest sonotube I've ever seen. It's kind of huge. Fill her with concrete and away you go. Next. That's it with the bolts at the bottom ready to go. And again, it was on-site concrete mixing. Away you go. Next. And it came delivered in a box, assembling. This is IKEA special. Next.
Do you have an Allen key with it?
Oh yeah, huge Allen key. Yeah, you should see the Allen key for the motor. Yeah. And boom truck to put it all together because it's big enough that it wasn't going to be hand done. Next. All right. Quick assembly. Stand up straight. It's the base that was important that hold everything up. Next. Okay, and again, everything gets slotted on top. Away you go. Next. More frames getting in there. You can see the frames for supporting all the panels. Next. And here they're putting up the panels, and each, in this case, when it was first built, each two panels had one microinverter. So it was all done with microinverters. Next. And on the left, you'll see that's it all together. And I have two feeds. This is a direct feed into the grid. I use none of it. I get paid 80.2 cents a kilowatt. So I don't want to use any of that expensive stuff. And so it goes straight out to the grid. Next. And that's just a picture of the electronics at the bottom. In order to get internet connected, I had point-to-point wireless from the house to here. So I do have a point-to-point wireless on this thing. Next. And that's the final product 50 panels. Next. And there's the example of it. This is a full tracking system. So in other words, in the morning, it turns itself to where the sun is supposed to be, and that follows it throughout the day. And you can see in this case, we didn't have much sun after 6 a.m. but it kept on producing right through to 8 o'clock when the sun down next. And this is another example of it. And the maximum output on this particular is 99, and it was 98 something. The actual, my maximum output is 995 by fit rules. I'm not allowed to put any more, and I'm also not allowed to have a battery in my house and system. And that's it. Oh, sorry, I forgot. That's just all the panels. I have internet connection on it, so I can tell you exactly when every panel is working and not working. And between when I built it in 2011 and now, every last inverter has been replaced at least once on warranty. So thank God I knew what was producing, what was not. And but it produces year round. I average 52 kilowatts per day for throughout the year. More in the summer, less in the winter, obviously.
Cool. That's amazing. Thanks a lot, Karel.
No problem.
There's a few questions there. So you're not a builder, right? You're not a home builder. And how did you learn about this building style?
That was actually, I don't know if you know, there's an organization near Ottawa called Seventh Gen. They actually had a workshop for building your own power, creating your own power. And I went to it. And during that, they said, here's some of the other things they do. And they showed them building a straw bale shed. And I laughed. And I said, okay, they're on the wacky tobacco and smoking mushrooms. They're crazy. They're out of their mind. But the more I read about it, the more I realized, holy wow, this has really got some potential. My father-in-law happened to be an architect. I worked with him, and he went in hook, line, and sinker. He thought it was a great idea. He helped me design the house, and we put it all together as a package. And my wife was actually the building contractor for it. So the general, she did all the hustling of people left and right. Large percentage is local contractors, except for the bale stuff. And there was a group of people that knew about earth and plaster. In this case, it's mud plaster, as opposed to some of them are actually concrete. And I hate concrete as a plaster. It's common, but the earth and plaster is much more fun. Right? Any other?
Cool. So the house is near Morden, right? So that's a bit west of Westport, right? So someone's asking if it's
south,
local. Yeah. South of there?
It's actually south of Westport. It's half an hour north of Kingston. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Was there ever a time during the construction process where you started doubting your choices? Like, what am I doing? Am I crazy?
No. Absolutely not. During the process, once I knew what I wanted to do, we spent years, probably 5 years, going around and helping people build their house, volunteering to help. And so I knew what I wanted, what I didn't want, what structures are good. And if you have an architect in your back pocket that helps you with details, he put a lot of details in there. So we were totally confident what we had would work, and would work extremely well. It's a house that cost me $300 a year to heat. Ventilation in the summer, the way it's designed is absolutely incredible. Open the windows and it's total flow through. I unfortunately, because of the climate change, have actually put an air conditioner in. I didn't think I would have to, but I put an air conditioner primarily because the floor stays cold, and on those hot, damp days, it blew through the house and the nice ventilation, and my floors got wet. So I needed something to mitigate the moisture in the summer. And the air conditioning was the best solution.
The solution, yeah.
I noticed you had a propane tank attached to the house. Was that being used for?
It's a passive solar house, but the actual prime heating it's somewhat of an indirect boiler. I've got one boiler that does the floors as well as my domestic hot water. Domestic hot water is a tank with the heating tubes around the outside, so it's indirect. I also have a preheat from the solar hot water that preheats the water before it goes into my tank. So yeah, the $300 a year is the amount I spend on propane to heat this house.
Cool. The next question is, how many square feet is a house?
That's one of those tricky. Officially, it's 1,800 square feet, but by the time you lose all the space for the bales and whatnot, it's about 1,500 equivalent for a living space.
Yeah, that's still pretty big. So, Although,
It's a good size, yeah.
yeah, a lot of people will say it's small, but actually it's a good size, yeah.
It's equivalent of probably a 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom house, yes.
Yeah, so we had a bungalow years ago, it was 1,400, and we had 3 bedrooms, 1 washroom, and a large kitchen and all that. So yeah, it's
That's
it's a
equivalent,
good,
it's
yeah,
equivalent, yeah.
yeah, it's a good sized house, more than enough for a small
For 2
family.
of us, yeah. Yeah, it is,
Yep.
yeah.
So any other questions, anybody? I see Craig is typing, but I haven't seen a question yet about, actually, Craig is the one who was asking about the whether you could hang a TV on the wall and all that. So you said earlier that that shouldn't be a problem, right?
It shouldn't be a problem. There's two things. You got to remember, you've got 1.5 inches probably of mud, solid mud, bonded totally to the straw. So if you put good anchors in there, it will hold a TV. Now, the question is, is it a 300-inch TV or something crazy like that? Now that's insanity. But I'm sure there are limits. I haven't tried it with a TV, but I know the folks have tried it. Like I say, they actually put a fish tank with rocks in it, and put some pegs through the wall, and set the fish tank on those pegs, and it held. So,
Wow. Okay.
and when we did our post construction, we did some pre testing of mud on bales, and I thought, okay, I could take this bale and just hit it with a hammer, and the mud would come off. I actually had to fight hard, tooth and nail, with one of those ice choppers between the straw and the mud to actually separate the mud from the straw. It's that well bonded into the mud. So there's a huge bonding process between the mud and the straw that's sitting there. I'm surprised nobody asked me about mice in my walls and the classic "where's the big bad wolf" type thing, and moisture in the walls. The response to that is the devil is in your roof. If you have a roof that lets moisture into your insulation, you're screwed. So in this case, that is the most important part of any construction, preventing moisture from your insulation. And the straw has next to no value for rodents or anything. So rodents, 1, don't want it, and 2, with 1 inch of mud on either side of it, you don't get to it. It's sealed. It's well sealed.
Cool. You have a question?
Yeah, so having been flooded last year, what happens if you have an overland flood with water from the outside trying to get into your house? What would it affect the wall at all?
It would affect, well, the classic thing is, because it's mud, it will absorb water and you will have mold. I guarantee it. I'm not too sure what would happen if you ever were in that situation. In theory, you could tear the heck out of the bottom part of your wall and replace it and then remud it. But knowing how difficult it was for me to tear the mud off my bales, and remember the bales are also stitched together and it's a pretty solid thing. I would be doing a Hail Mary routine. The other thing I've seen cases where houses have burnt, everything else burnt except for the straw and the walls. They don't burn. So I wouldn't want that. I don't know what happened, and I don't know if anybody has had that happen. And it would scare the hell out of me. Yes.
Yeah, flood suck. Do not recommend it.
Yeah, but the damage was in the basement for you, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so he doesn't
I
have.
don't have a basement. I'm a slab on a grade. There is no footings. There's nothing down below. So in my case, I'm well more than 2 meters above any local waterway. It's there, and the waterway isn't prone to flooding. So in this case, I'm not worried about it. If you were, then that you'd have to consider that. But yeah, I don't think it would be very nice once the mud and straw gets wet. It would be one hell of a mess. It would be horrible. Yeah.
So Craig, I'm not sure what you're asking. Could you come off mute and ask it verbally? Craig? So what he wrote is, okay, I'll let him go ahead, Craig. We don't hear you. We can't hear you.
Oh, how about now? Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I I had a friend who had a Strawbale House out in Lanark. She was a small redhead, and God, her name is just sort of gone out of my head. Did you ever help build any Strawbale houses out in the Lanark area?
Oh boy, I'm trying to think. South of Ottawa, I did. I don't think we did anybody in Lanark. We did a fair amount in Peterborough. Peterborough area, that was a heavy area. There was a fellow just south of Ottawa who built a 2-story load-bearing straw bale house, and he's the one that convinced me never to do load-bearing because too much effort for keeping it dry. No, I don't remember it off the top of my head. But now we're talking quite a few years ago, and you see this gray hair?
Yeah. No, it's certainly what I saw of her place. I mean, I saw that what you see there, but you lose a lot of square footage, you know, for the walls and all of that. But if you have a large property, like you obviously have, you know, the fact that you're losing, you know, 20% of the home space to walls and all of that really doesn't make much of a deal. It might be more of an issue if you were trying to do it in an inner city or a suburb type area, I would think. Have you heard of anybody trying to do one sort of in the suburbs type
Yes,
thing?
I've heard them. Yeah, and they're mostly multiple story. And again, yeah, you'd have to decide what the requirements are. But I don't. If let's put it this way, there are lots of houses in the Ottawa area that are 3,500 square feet. So for you to turn around and say, I can't build a 1,500 or an 1,800 square foot in the city because the city lots are too small, I think I'd be surprised. And this is, again, a trade-off. I got walls that breathe, they're healthy, they're non-VOC, I get huge fire ratings. It's absolutely gorgeous as far as color and texture. This is an absolute ideal thing. The loss of square footage is absolutely minor compared to the benefits that I get out of having a house of this nature. That's
And when you compare the pricing, you said you thought that it was a similar price to what your friend had paid. Was he building a 1,500 square foot house, or was he building a 2,000 square foot house? Like, what was his size of his house that he built?
No, I was comparing the 1,800 square foot to his 1,800 square foot. Now he had a full basement. We were about the same price. I was a little bit more than him, but as you know, in all houses, the devil's in the details. I spent more money in heating. I spent a fair amount extra on the roof, the steel roof, the 50-year steel roof. I spent a good amount of money in my, I spent a lot of money in the kitchen. That kitchen was relatively expensive. I also have triple glaze windows with, he wasn't triple glaze. I was $150, he was $130 per square foot. So as I say, it was similar. I spent a little more, but from my end of it, I spent money on things that were dramatically important for me, but it wasn't, I was spending twice as much as him because I did a straw bale. I saved some money on material, but what I saved on material, it cost in labor because doing the straw was quite labor intensive. And I refused to have volunteers because I saw what they do and I don't trust volunteers.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Karel, and we're going to move along, but thanks very much. And Karel is actually, he's going to send some people to Westport for test drives, right? And
Yeah.
on the, I think it's September 18th, we're going to be in Morden, a few of us to do a presentation. So it should be lots of fun. So looking forward to seeing you there. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
So Lawrence? Good.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, it's been a rather slow news month. But we don't have a lot of time in the meeting left anyway, so that's not too bad. We'll run through it. Some of the top items, Fisker filed for bankruptcy. So that's kind of over. They're now trying to, sell off their assets and all that kind of stuff. All right, next slide. So GM has claimed that they're past their ultimate production issues. So for those who've been following GM's progress with EVs that's been holding them back for like a year and a half now or something in that range, where they can't, scale up their volume, and largely because they were doing fine making the cells for the battery packs, but then they had a tough time getting the modules put together. So they wanted to do kind of everything in house, so they had like specific contractors for all that. So the CEO said, we're past that. I don't know how true that is. We'll have to see like how deliveries actually start ramping up in the next few months. But the interesting thing about this story is that at the very same time that they're suddenly getting over the production issues, they're now like, hey, EVs aren't on the decline, they're doing fine. Like, the point is, these companies will always just say whatever, goes along with the narrative of their company doing well. So if they aren't able to produce EVs, then the story is that, people don't want them, right? Kia EV3, apparently to be built in Mexico. So that's good. And also, actually, I think I saw a headline today about the Canadian government saying they're going to announce tariffs on Chinese EVs. I didn't put that in the news because that happened after I put the slides together. But it was like in last month's news, there was kind of an item about Canadian government starting to think about that. So it looks like it might become a reality. So good to see more North American-based production coming online, because we may not be able to rely as much on the imported EVs from China. Although we don't actually have confirmation that the EV3 is even going to be sold here yet, but hopefully we will. If they're building, they're building in Mexico, probably sell in North America.
Yeah, probably.
So good news for Kia. Their global sales reached another record. They're climbing by month. Okay, next item. And then this is slightly different from the last article. The last one was about global sales. This one's about Hyundai's US sales. Also hitting another record, up 42% year over year. So that's not like from the previous month. That's like comparing May to the previous May. I think, yeah, we're looking at May. And their hydrogen powered car sold 6 units. And I think that's globally, actually. I don't think they're even selling them in the US. Okay, global EV sales, 25% decrease year over year.
Oops, sorry.
You're blazing through these.
No, sorry, it's because I was trying to look for something else here, sorry.
Actually, and, Model Y is still number one in the charts. So not a massive decline. For Tesla, like some of the, narratives are saying, if you look at actual data. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, but what's interesting though is, like you say there, the next 5 are all BYD. So they're cranking out lots and lots of cars.
BYD also working on a plan in Mexico. They don't have, it's at pretty early stages now because they don't even have a specific site. So they're negotiating stuff with the politicians there. Anyway, says it'll create 10,000 jobs in the region, which is nice. Hopefully they'll produce lots of cars. Okay, to our Tesla section. So this was kind of the biggest headline related to Tesla this month. So many people probably heard about this. Elon Musk won shareholder approval for the pay package, which isn't technically worth exactly $56 billion. It's like an amount of stock options. It's based on the valuation of stock and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so the shareholders, which there's some large institutional shareholders that kind of overwhelm the votes here. So it's really down to like a few groups who really decided this. They voted to approve it, but it's still over a court battle in Delaware that may affect whether or not it actually goes through. But they also voted to move out of Delaware, move their legal incorporation from Delaware to Texas. And Musk's brother is now back on the board, as well as Rupert Murdoch's son. So yeah, that's that item. Cybertruck's getting some charging improvements. So this is welcome news, and hopefully a good sign if anyone has like a Model Y with 408680 cells, which may hopefully get the same improvements, but that's not confirmed yet. So upon the initial release of the Cybertruck, they were kind of dialing back the charging speeds until they had enough fleet data. Now they are bringing up a significant amount, which corresponds to 30% increase in energy added within 15 minutes. So now you can get basically 250 kilometers. So pretty good. Like you could drive 2 hours between charging stops, which is a nice benchmark to reach.
Oops.
Sure. And it's also not clear yet if a Cybertruck requires to be an 800 volt station for this to actually matter. So, like, it's possible that if you plug into most Tesla superchargers that can only support up to 500 volts, but this won't actually make a difference. We don't know. Okay, yeah. And AI5 had some info to come out, nothing too official, but just some tweets basically from Elon explaining that they're going to start renaming their hardware to just call it AI version number. So hardware 5 for FSD is going to be called AI5 with 10 times the compute power of what's in hardware 4. And power draw will increase a bit, up to 800 watts, although that will decrease with lower steam complexity, so it'll be dynamic power consumption. Now, interesting about this is they keep updating hardware, but yet they keep promising that older cars will get FSD or, you know, like unsupervised FSD eventually. We put our critical thinking caps on. If we even believe that this AI5 hardware will eventually have full FSD, you know, how would hardware 3, right? If it requires this much more juice to actually function in real life. Just something to think about if you're potentially wanting to drive 16 grand on FSD, probably, you know, probably don't do it.
Yeah, 800 watts is a lot. It's a lot of heat to
Yeah,
dissipate.
fortunately, like they can recover all that into the car, right? Since the heat pump system integrates all the heat, and if it's the winter, you're basically using the extra power. Your FSD computer is going to heat your car. But I mean, it's just something that's
Running a gaming PC.
Or a server in the basement, server room in the basement. Okay, that's all? Okay, great, thanks a lot. Okay, so, I guess this is the last section, right? So past events. We'll talk about the future events after. So again, there was a copy. We had 2 this month. We were basically the first week, so we didn't have any at that time. Next slide, please. So Patagonia, May 29th, there was myself and Karel that went there. And there was a movie that they showed, We the Power. It's available, I'm not sure where, but I'd encourage people who haven't seen it to watch it. It's about what they've done in Europe with co-ops to deploy lots of green energy. So they got acceptance of windmills by getting people to own part of the windmill, right? So very interesting story what they did there. Next slide, please. So Fun Fair, Blackburn Fun Fair, for those who were there, we were quite a bit disappointed with the number of test drives this year. So we're going to see what we're going to do next year. Now, the organizer of the fair sent me an interesting question. What he was proposing is that, what he said is that this year, like every year, the generators are pain in the behind. Okay, so for those of you who've worked with a generator before, you have to put this stinky stuff in there regularly. They stink when they burn this stuff. They're noisy. They're a real pain in the butt, right? So what he was saying is, well, could we use your cars instead? So that got me thinking, and I thought about it a bit more, but not finished. So the F-150 Lightning and the EV Silverado, they'll have lots of capacity to produce power, right? So I'm thinking maybe what we could do is we could borrow those vehicles from the dealers and use those to power the. So the generators are for the inflatable things there for kids, and there's half a dozen of them, and a few require 3 plugs. And anyways, so it requires a fair amount of electricity, but I think it's something that will be doable.
I have other thoughts.
With the Ford and like the i5 and the EV6, can be like 1 chance.
Well, the problem is you would. Well, I don't know how many amps each takes.
So the smaller ones are 14 amps, 110 volts. I mean, that's doable, and it's a 12-hour spin. You can do it. It's just a long time.
Yeah, but the thing is that the plug is 15 amp and the circuit is 15 amp. And theoretically, you're not supposed to use it above 80% of capacity for a long period of time.
14 amps.
So, okay.
Yeah, no, we have a bouncy castle.
We'll have to look at it and figure out the calculations, but it's very intriguing proposal.
I have another idea. That we can talk about later.
Yeah, and actually, what would be interesting is to make a big point of it with the media and try to get some media attention on it, right? It's probably the first time. Maybe the first time this would happen.
I have thoughts on this, but we can talk about it at the
We'll
round
talk
table.
about it more, so we still need to think about what we want to do, but anyways, not a very large amount of test drives, but anyways, it is what it is. So, June 4th, I mentioned that I would be doing this, so I did for EBS, they have a monthly series, Canada Talks Electric Vehicles, I think it's called. Should be science. Anyways, so it's recorded. If you want to see it, it's available online. What I was talking about there is, well, actually, what prompted me to do that is that there was a previous presentation in that series where the presenter was essentially saying that, sales would increase slowly and in 2030 we'd be at 30% market share.
Yeah, it's probably like next year.
Well, I wanted to sort of correct that and explain why, right? So I think I did a reasonable job at that. If you're interested, anyways, I had fun doing it. Like this. Next thing we did is in Almont, we went and did some test drives. Talked to a lot of people, and it was interesting. I was surprised to see how many EVs came to. We were right beside a farmer's market. Was surprised to see how many EVs came to the farmer's market to go to the farmer's market, not to come with us, right? So, very interesting because, what I'm hearing is people think that if they're in the country, they can't have an EV, right? Which really it's the opposite, but anyways, we know that, but, people don't really know that. Next slide, please.
But also
I wouldn't say the opposite.
the organizer,
Not one in the city too.
the organizer just reached out to us today asking about buying an EV.
Yeah, I think,
So we definitely converted somebody.
yeah, so Mike's presentation.
Yeah, I would say we did a few test drives before and had some EV skeptics, and they went in, did Mike's presentation, and came out and saw me after. It was like, buy an EV.
Yeah.
So that was a great presentation.
Well, thank you.
We got lots of feedback. It was a very good presentation. People really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I wish I could get the recording from the lady, but
Yeah.
she's resisting.
I mean, you said the same thing you said many times before,
Mm.
right? So it's not really different.
But I think I killed it that time, apparently. So
Yeah.
where's your mission,
Okay,
right? I wish.
so let's talk about upcoming events.
Oh, yeah. I
So
forgot your email.
I have to double check this, but I think next month we'll be able to go back to the Institute. Okay, I have to double check. But that's the plan for now. So July 29th, next slide, please. Cars and coffee, we have a bunch of them this month because we're not that busy. You'll see that we're busy on the 20th of July in Westport, but everything else we're not. So we'll have 4 events. Next slide. Mike.
Oh, wow.
Tomorrow, beautiful picture.
Thanks, man.
So Mike will be presenting to our cluster environment, which I don't know what the heck they are, but whatever. They wanted a presentation.
It's from the Glebe Coffee House I did. Somebody was like, hey, can you present for my group? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what happened there.
And if you guys know of any other possibilities like that, just bring them on. Doing your presentation like that is really not hard, right, Mike?
Yep.
It's just rinse and repeat, right?
Yep.
I don't know if people in contact, we do a Discovery Cafe here,
Okay.
and I put your name on the list, so.
Okay, we'd be happy to. Sure.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so this is Wednesday, okay? This here, I put it on here because I invited this guy named Paul Martin, not the ex-prime minister, but this guy here.
I've seen him.
He's actually an engineer
Yeah.
and an energy engineer. He's done hydrogen projects in the past.
He was on Fully Charged.
So he knows his stuff. He was on. I got him to come to Cape Coral.
Nice.
So anyways, he's coming to present to the May Association for the Club of Rome, which I'm part of. So this is a bunch of mostly white-haired people. Many of them have PhDs. Some of them are climate scientists. And they're in that organization because they want to do something about climate change, right? So the reason I brought him here is because of all his knowledge, and the idea is to try to get these people to understand that we have solutions that work, that will decarbonize our society. And so this climate change issue, we could do something about it. Now this, you see the big Swiss Army knife? This is a concept. So if you look here, Liebrecht and Associates. So if you know who that is, Michael Liebrecht, he's the one who founded New Energy Finance, which became Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Really well known guy. So he created a small market, this concept here. So what this guy is saying, like it says there, hydrogen is like a Swiss Army knife. You could do almost anything you want. You could cut down a tree with this thing, right? There's a few tools right here and there that allow you to cut down a tree. But you would never use this to cut down a tree, right? It's not because it can do it that you should use it to do it. So that's essentially what we'll be talking about on Wednesday. So the stuff in reading there, except for this one here, that long haul aviation.
Nope.
We'll explain why what happened. But the rest there are pretty good bets that they will happen. So anything that has to do with chemistry, it's because it's a molecule that has some chemical characteristics that is good for those things. But anything that's energy or transport related, forget it.
I don't know about cutting down trees with hydrogen, but you can definitely blow them up.
So the next EVCO event, the full EVCO event is July 20th in Westport. So there's a car show there. Lots of other cars will be there, and we will be there to show off EVs and to do test drives. Okay, so it should be interesting. Now, if you'd like to volunteer for this, at the moment, we have exactly one car on the test drive thing, so we need more, okay? Actually, Ryan has got a commitment, I think, he's just confirming it, that we could get a 94 from a dealer. And what I think we should be doing is trying to get a 95 or, a Ioniq 5 or something of the sort, excuse me, from a dealer also. But anyways, bottom line is we need to work on that. Next event, Capital Prize. So we are registered for this, August 24th and 25th. Last year, I didn't know this, but we were registered and we could have been there for the 2 days, but we were there for only 1 day. Anyways, this year we'll be there from 12 to 8 both days. Okay, this is on Bank Street, and what I've asked them, we have a booth to be paid for it anyway. I'm gonna ask if I could bring one car. So I'll try to bring one car that we could show as an EV, right? Some interesting car like the Ioniq 5 or something like that, right? Okay, next one. This here is, I put it here, but it's a bit tentative yet. So Lawrence has worked on trying to get us to do September 4th. We would do both the test drives at the Tangle Community Center. That's out in the West End. Next slide. September 18th, this is what I was talking about with Karel earlier, the presentation more. So I'll be going over there. If someone else wants to join me, you're more than welcome. It's about 2 hours from here. I will be driving. So if someone wants to come with me, no problem. You can do that. Then you get the pleasure of talking to me for 2 hours on the way there and another 2 hours on the way back. So I should have said that now that.
Yes, Ruth, to answer your question.
What's the?
Ruth is asking if your Chevy Bolt would be an asset.
Yes, it would be, yes, it would be. So, car fair, so we aren't registered yet. Craig, we should talk offline about this. The site that they have right now, the car fair site says site under construction. So I don't think they've taken some registrations yet, but anyways, we'd like to go to the car fair. And then here, this is normally the thing we do at last time. It's going to be at the Just Food Farm down the street. Yeah, so I'm not particularly happy with the venue because it's out of the way. Lansdowne was much better. We had 3,500 people walk through last year. That's not going to happen. It's just, but anyways, we'll figure out what we'll do. We'll probably do something scaled down. It won't be anywhere near like we had before because we wouldn't have the room. But we probably want to, offer some test drives and all that. Okay, so that's what we have in terms of events. We're working on more, but we'll stay tuned on that. We're going to, as soon as we have events announced, we'll announce them. Now, if you know of somewhere, someplace, some counselor or something that wants to do an event, let us know. We still have a fair amount of space available in July. Just one event in July, and in August, we don't have that much either, okay? Last thing I want to mention is that the membership, we changed the membership. It was put on our website a couple of weeks ago. So the basic bottom tier is a plug-in tier. It's $30 a year. Okay, so that's the new rate. That's $20.54. Now we have two other tiers here, charging and fast charging that are more expensive. Okay, we are looking to give some benefits to people who have a higher tier. Benefits that others don't get. We'll see what we do there. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise a bit more money because we don't have that much money. And if you look at things like insurance alone, we actually paid it this week. No, last week, Friday. It's like $1,700 for the year, just the insurance. Okay. What is it? The fun fair costs us $500. Right. So it'd be nice to have a bit more money. Now the Pride is only $100 for the 2 days, which I was surprised. That was good. So anyways, if you're interested, if you want to donate also, you're on donate right there. And I think that is it. Is there something else? The YouTube channel. We now have 95 subscribers.
Ooh, getting big leagues.
So I would encourage you, if you're not subscribed, to subscribe and tell your friends about it. There's a lot of stuff, and not just the monthly meetings, we have a bunch of other things. And actually, the presentation I did at DVS, I'd like to put it on there and tell you.
Send me the link.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. Okay. And now it's roundtable.
Okay, but before we do the round table, if you're watching us online, stick around. If you're watching us on YouTube, this is where your video ends. So thank you for watching, and see you next month.